Mindset Makeover Week 2. So if you joined me last week, we had week 1. We talked about Mindset 101. We dove into a little bit about what is mindset when I talk about that. What am I talking about? How does our mindset affect our happiness and success? And we created some awareness around that mindset. So if you joined me last week, I'm curious, how was it listening to your thoughts for a week? Did anything come up that surprised you? I'd love to know. Now this week, week 2, I want to dive a little further into that awareness. I think this is where it gets really fun. This is where we can begin to purposely look at our mindset and begin to shift it. And this is how we can begin to purposely then also shift our lives, which I think is pretty fun and exciting. So one of the biggest mindset blocks I've seen with both myself and some of my clients is holding on to an old identity or having an identity that doesn't serve us. So what do I mean when I say identity? I know most of us know what the word identity means, but in this construct, an identity is essentially a mindset for how we see ourselves. It's the way we define ourselves. It's the labels we give ourselves. It's how we show up in the world. And studies have shown that we will act, our behavior that we will do will be congruent to the way we see ourselves. So we'll behave in a way that is congruent with our identity, meaning essentially that we will do everything in our power to have our exterior world match this identity that we have for ourselves. Now, anytime we're opening a new chapter in our lives, so that can be anything from moving to getting married, to getting divorced, to starting a new health regimen, to starting your own business, to creating something new, to having a new creative endeavor, to a new relationship. Anytime we're opening that new chapter in our life, life really asks us to evaluate our identity. Because so often, our current identity won't serve us in this next chapter or this new phase of our lives. But it can be so uncomfortable to get rid of our old identities and to shed our old identity. I know when I started my business, I had to get rid of some old identities and shift into a new identity. And if I hadn't, I would have remained stuck and I wouldn't have been able to create what I wanted to. And while this is true, and while I knew this, it was really uncomfortable and really tough to get rid of that old identity because that was something I was really comfortable with. And as humans, we seek comfort and we avoid discomfort as much as we possibly can. You know, we are constantly getting new opportunities and new challenges that present themselves that require us to get rid of our old identities and to up-level our identity. And while shifting into that new mindset that comes with a new identity will open us up to a new possibility, it can be really tough to say goodbye to our old identity because it is cozy and it's how we identify ourselves. We cling on to our identities, even if they don't help us, even if they don't serve us, because it's how we know ourselves. It's how we show up in the world. It's how we define ourselves. And it's also how we've taught the world we are. It's how the world expects us to show up. So it can be a little tricky to shift this, but as the saying goes, old ways won't open new doors. We can't expect an entirely new version of life to manifest itself by remaining in the same mindset and identity that has kept us where we currently are. I think so often we will either find ourselves in a situation that we don't identify with, or we'll be in that transition place. We'll be in that place where we're trying to create something new. And we do have to shed that old identity and to create a new identity to be able to shift into that place. And if we aren't aware of what's going on, if we aren't aware of how our identity is affecting us, we can sabotage ourselves because we won't have that identity that supports that version of our life we want. I think a great example of this is what happens with lottery winners. So I don't know if you know this, but about 70% of people who win the lottery or who get a really big landslide of money go broke within a few years. 70%. I think that's crazy. And you might think, not me. If I won some money, I'd be just fine. Thank you very much. But think about it. Here you get this huge landslide of money. You win all this money. And yet, if you aren't aware of it, your mindset is still fixed in your previous identity, an identity that had you match your behaviors to create a reality that matched that identity and have an income level that matched how you saw yourself. So if, for example, you win all this money and you have a broke identity, or you have an I'm not good with money identity, even if you win the lottery, again, you're going to behave in a way that matches your identity. You're going to work your way right back to your previous income level, to where you feel comfortable, because that's how you see yourself. And this is how 70% of people who win the lottery end up broke. Now, on the flip side, there are lots of people who are essentially broke, but they have a different belief system, or they have a rich identity, and they go on to create a completely different life for themselves. We see this all the time with awesome success stories of people who pull themselves out of poverty. And of course, lots of things go into that, but part of what goes into that is they have an identity that serves them and an identity that helps them out. So this is why it is so incredibly important that we are not only aware of our identity, but that we're aware of the labels that we're giving ourselves, because those labels, how we define ourselves, that all becomes a part of our identity. And again, our behaviors, everything we take action on, we are going to have those actions match our identity. So we're going to do everything in our power to have our outside world match our identity. The cool thing is, if you can change your identity, you can change your life. It sounds crazy, but it is true. I've seen it so many times. So change your identity, you can change your life. If you can shift your identity, if you can get rid of an outdated identity, if you can get rid of an identity that doesn't serve you and shift into one that does serve you, you can transform your exterior world. So today, for Mindset Makeover Week 2, I want to leave you with an action step so that we can create more of an awareness and put this into action. So I'm going to give you a couple of questions that I would love for you to answer, or to find, I think this is a great thing to dialogue with someone else. It'd be great to find either a partner or a friend if you have a coach, and to go through these questions. So first, I want you to ask yourself, who are you? How do you identify yourself? What are the labels you give yourself? What is that definition you have for yourself? After you've got some clarity around that, how is that identity? How are those labels? How is that those different words you're giving to define yourself? How is that affecting your current reality? So how is your current identity affecting your current reality? And then I want you to think about, what do you want in your future? What do you want in your life? What do you want your life to look like? You can look at your life big picture, or pick a small area in your life. And who would you have to be? What identity would you have to create that life? And if you want some bonus points, I know I've got some overachievers out there. If you want some bonus points, I would love for you to think about one small action you can take in the next week to take this identity that would help you create that life you want, one small action to put that identity into play. I'm a very big believer that our life is a culmination of a series of small actions we've taken or that we haven't taken, and that we can create shifts in our lives by all of those small actions. It's usually not one giant thing we do. It's not going to the gym that one time for 5 hours. It's showing up every day and lifting those weights that creates that shift. Gym analogy for you. So if you want that bonus step, what is one small action you can take to put that new identity into play? And then next week I will be back. We'll be diving into week 3. If you want to check all of this out on my website, I've got a link for you. You can sign up, get this delivered to your inbox. And I'm also going to be announcing a new course I've been working on behind the scenes. So you'll be the first to know about that. If you want to hop over to the website, check that out. And if you are listening to this, I'd love to know who's listening. What is your biggest takeaway? Leave me a comment below. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section and I will get back to you. Thank you so much. I will see you next week, and I am wishing you your version of success. Bye.